Hey friends, I'm Sharon Betters, and this is day 2 of 12 days of Christmas encouragement. Recently, Chuck and I were flying home and we were sitting in the bulkhead seat, so that meant that Chuck had to put our personal items up in the storage compartment a couple of seats behind us. So as soon as the plane landed, he jumped up to get the bag so that he wouldn't bother anybody else. They wouldn't have to get out of his way. At exactly that same moment, a woman sitting a couple of rows behind us jumped into the aisle. Now, you know that when you are on a plane, there's an etiquette where you take turns, but she was obviously in a big hurry. She pushed her way to the front, and Chuck was behind her, struggling to get the bags out of the storage compartment. I have to admit to you, my flesh started kicking in, and I was annoyed. I thought, come on, lady, why are you in such a hurry? Why couldn't you just wait just 60 seconds? Then, though, she began berating, well, actually it didn't sound like berating at first, talking to the flight attendants, 2 young men, and she was telling them something about some of the comments they had made. At first, we all laughed nervously, trying to follow her words, but then it was obvious that she was very, very angry about a comment that one of the flight attendants had made about aunts. Aunts as in aunties, unwanted aunties, unwanted aunts. We could not understand why this was such a problem. And the more she talked, the angrier I felt. I thought, come on, lady, give it a rest. They apologized. She would not stop. She kept telling them about how they were insensitive, how they needed to care more about the people on the plane, how they needed to be more careful with their words. These poor guys, they were young. They had no idea what she was talking about. Then suddenly she said, after a few minutes of this berating, I am that auntie you were talking about, and I am on my way home to bury my 2 nieces. Well, you can imagine the silence that fell on those first few rows of people. Now we go from a woman who we're thinking of all of the videos we've seen on TV of the rage incidences on planes and wondering if it was going to explode into that, to recognizing this woman is brokenhearted. As I stood in front of her to the side, Chuck was behind her, and I thought, Lord, what should I do? I don't know what to do. Should I reach out to her? If I do, is she going to be angrier? Will I make it worse? But I knew that I had to reach out. Who better than me, who has lost a child, could reach out and touch her with the hope of Jesus somehow? And so I put my hand on her arm and I said, I'm so sorry. This has happened to you. I get the grief. We lost our son and his friend in a fatal car accident, and she was crying. Her tears just kept falling. She could not stop crying. But in a quiet voice, she said, they just don't get it. They don't care. They don't understand. Well, of course, they didn't understand. And we really don't want people to understand that kind of grief. But we stood next to one another, and I talked quietly with her, and then we departed the plane. But we were on a plane where we were required to walk from the plane to the terminal, and it was a windy, cold night. And Chuck and I are not too firm in our steps these days, and so we're struggling to get down that long walk, and it was a struggle. And then suddenly this woman who was in such a hurry ran back and grabbed our bags and helped us to get to the ground and said, this helps me feel a little better. We walked to the terminal, and as we walked, I asked her questions about her nieces, and then she said, my son and 2 nieces were killed by a drunk driver. I was overwhelmed with sorrow for this woman, and I thought I need to get her name so that I can stay in touch with her. But then she saw family in the terminal and ran toward them, and by the time we got to the terminal, she was gone. I tried to find this accident report for New Jersey. I could not find it. So I'm just trusting that God used those few moments to help comfort her and encourage her in a way that I know I would have been encouraged by a stranger in the throes of grief. But here's the thing. Every one of us has a story. This woman had a story. Her anger, her behavior, it was not showing us the depths of her heartbreak. And I'm not excusing poor behavior, absolutely not. But my reaction was not a very good one, my initial reaction. God had something for me to do in that moment, some way of helping to turn her heart toward him. I don't know. if God wanted me to talk to her about Jesus. I don't know what he's going to do with that moment, but I imagine her sharing the story with her family and then saying, and this strange woman walked up to me and talked to me about her son. And for just a moment, her grief perhaps was turned in a different direction. Well, over the next few days, over the 12 days of Christmas, we're going to be talking about biblical encouragement and what it means. And in that moment, there was a moment of biblical encouragement in my attempt to help turn her heart toward Jesus. But guess what? That encouragement was contagious as she came back to try to help us. And so I hope that today, as you go about your business getting ready for Christmas, that you will be looking at people in a new way and thinking, this woman at the cashier has a story. That elderly woman who's taking so long putting her money back in her wallet has a story, and I have a story too. And it's the story of Jesus. And I want him to flow through me this Christmas in a way that helps turn hearts toward him. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again tomorrow. I'm Sharon Betters, and this is the 12 Days of Christmas Encouragement brought to you by Mark Inc. Ministries.